Hello, everyone, and welcome to Knockdown Sports Radio. My name is Chris Calicut, and if you're not familiar with the show, we appreciate you checking us out. If you found us through the Wrestling Perspective Podcast Network, just through our own Twitter, anything like that, man, we're happy to have you. I know some of you guys may be joining in for the first time that may be wrestling-centric. This is going to be very sports, overall-centric. But I would like to introduce my partner in crime. We go way back in the Wayback Machine. This is Mr. Cody Teague. How you doing, my man?
Chris, I'm doing great. It is good to be back. I'm excited to do another pod. Hopefully we get some recognition that we deserve for two idiots who think they know everything but don't know anything. I am ready to go and talk a little sports dirt with you, my friend.
That should most definitely be our slogan.
Idiots that don't know.
Not gonna lie. But if you do follow us on Twitter, thank you for that. If not, you can find us at Knockdown _. Hey, that was good. Knockdown _media. We've recently changed our Twitter handle from Knockdown _radio to Knockdown _media. So appreciate you checking us out there. And I just wanted to say a quick hello to the guys at the Wrestling Perspective Podcast. If you're not familiar with those guys, Dennis Farrell, he and I used to work together a little bit over at Wrestling Inc. back in the day. We are no longer with Wrestling Inc. at this time, but he sort of started his own venture with TNA Impact superstar Petey Williams, and now Mr. James Ellsworth, Mr. No Chin Music, Mr. Intergender Champion. Any man with two hands has a fighting chance. Yes, intergender champion, Cody. You heard that correctly. He has a belt.
I'm so out of the loop, man. I hadn't watched wrestling in like 5 years, man. I don't even know.
Well, see, this is on the independent circuit, though.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not with WWE anymore, but James actually does a really fantastic job with Dennis on that, and both Petey and James are super smart guys. Dennis is a fantastic host and puts in his very smart 2 cents as well, but to go figure out where those guys are, they put out episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays typically. Sometimes they'll drop them a little early, but you can find them at WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com. And your boy right here actually runs their social media account right now, which we're still growing. We're in the baby stages right now, but are you ready? You got to help me with this one. You can find us at WP _ pod, WP _ pod. So get all the introductions out of the way, but you know where to find us, and you can find Cody at CRTeague008. Is that correct?
That's always correct, my friend.
Fantastic. Well, so as we said earlier, a little bit of sports knowledge here for you. I'm a lifelong sports fan. We're both from North Carolina. If you can't tell by either of our accents, probably mine more so than Cody's. But I promise I'm slightly smarter than I sound, definitely smarter than I look. Cody, not so sure.
Man,
well, that's like a backhanded compliment, really. But man, I mean, you and I both go way back with sports. We've been following it since knee high to a grasshopper, essentially. That's a Southern thing, if you didn't know as well. We've already turned off all of our Northern audience, so good job, Chris. But yeah, man. Tar Heel fan here, Panther fan here, Atlanta Braves fan here, which we'll talk a little bit about later. Just been immersed. We've both played athletics. We'll call it at the collegiate level, right? Yeah, technically.
Quotations.
I mean, you can look it up. It's there. But I
was academic all conference, man. I mean, I have a bag that proves that. I have 2 bags.
That's true. I have a couple of trophies in my parents' house somewhere that proves that we were okay at what we did at one point in time. But I've been in the sports business world for a few years. Cody's been in the finance world for a few years. But yeah, man, just tell us a little bit about your sports background real quick, and then we'll get into some pop tops.
Man, I love it, man. Well, as you said, we go back. It's good. It's good to be back. Me and Chris, we've always been able to have civil and uncivil discussions on these types of topics that we will be talking about today. In terms of me, I'm a Steelers fan. I am a Braves fan. I'm a Hurricanes fan, a Chelsea fan in soccer. I pull for every single local North Carolina team except for the Panthers, to be completely honest with you. I mean, you know, Hurricanes, NCFC, Charlotte Independence, NC Courage. We got our Grasshoppers. We got our Dash. I mean, literally, you can ask my wife. All I do is watch sports 24/7.
And go Swarm. Happens. Go Swarm.
And Greensboro Swarm. And the Greensboro Cobras, our new American or Arena Football League.
Oh, dear God. We have one of those now?
We have one of those now. So it's crazy. Wow. And I follow all of it. I follow Bundesliga. I follow Serie A. I follow La Liga. I'm more of a soccer fan than Chris is, but
yes,
I just love talking about it. And that's the whole reason me and Chris do this, just to talk the crap and have a good time. So man, let's go. Let's do this.
All right, man. So the big thing going on right now is the NBA playoffs.
Is it a big thing though?
Is it big? I mean, yeah. I mean, all right. Here's my thing. Full disclosure before we even really get started. I'm a very casual NBA fan at best. I take a look at it from afar, right? Not necessarily super close, but I know enough to be dangerous and also to have an opinion, whether that's truly educated or not, whatever. But the playoffs going on right now, first round in the books, second round in progress as we speak. And it is May the 9th, I believe it is right now. There we go. I think it's May 9th. Anyways, check the date on the YouTube page. But so first rounds are in the books. Actually, some pretty decent series, Cody. Let's run down the list real quick. Let's see. Eastern Conference. Toronto Raptors versus the Washington Wizards. Toronto won the series 4-2. And we got a little confidence, thinking, okay, they might give Cleveland a run for their money, even though they're the 1 seed and Cleveland's the 4 seed. So that was proved to be slightly false confidence, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, when you look at the Eastern Conference in the NBA, I mean, you really only had 3 to 4 teams that was even going to be in contention, and then everybody else is just going to be trying to fight for their lives, even though the Milwaukee Bucks put up a great fight with the Celtics, which I know you'll talk about a little later. But the Raptors handled the Wizards fairly easily. I mean, it was no big deal to them to just absolutely, how you would say, shatter brick in the second round, losing 4 straight games. So, I mean, it was a tale of 2 cities in Toronto, unfortunately.
Nice literary reference there. But, Toronto still has, I think, 1 or 2 years left to do something. Washington still somewhat of a team on the rise. 4-2, 1 versus 8 seed. Nothing to shake a stick at there. Next matchup was the Boston Celtics over the Milwaukee Bucks, and it went all 7 behind pretty much Giannis Antetokounmpo. Is that right?
Dude, I have no idea. I've been trying to figure that out for 3 years now, and I just can't do it. We're just going to call him the Greek freak on this show because that's what he is. He's by far one of the best athletes I've ever seen in the planet in terms of his wingspan, like an airplane, how high he can jump, and just how quick he is. It's phenomenal to watch him play. I feel like if the Bucks keep in and keep building pieces around him, Milwaukee's going to be dangerous. They're going to be a lot more than just beer up there.
Oh, absolutely. And cheese, apparently. Different time of year for the cheeseheads. But no, I think the Bucks have a good young nucleus. It's just going to be, how long are you going to be able to hold on to that superstar for, I guess you can call that a smaller market in Milwaukee. Could there be greener pastures somewhere else for the Greek freak to go to in the future? But I think a bright future for that young nucleus in Milwaukee. Next up, the Philadelphia 76ers trusted the process and defeated the Miami Heat by a pretty surprising 4-1. I didn't know it would be this one-sided, Cody. What about you?
I mean, they have all the pieces together. I mean, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons came to play. Now, unfortunately, as we're probably going to talk to about the conference semifinals here in just a moment, Ben Simmons has not showed up against the Celtics.
No,
I mean, he had a 1-point game and no field goals in the semifinals. Anyway, digress on that. I have to stick with my favorite rapper, Lil Dicky, in terms of trusting the process. But I I have my doubts in those semifinals, even though they look like a contender in the first round.
Well, all right, so here's my deal with the 76ers. Ben Simmons cannot shoot past 6 feet. He can't make anything out of the lane. And that's going to be an issue, not just for the 76ers, but for him as a potential star in the future, because we've seen guys like him that have developed a jump shot, look, say maybe as at a Blake Griffin of sorts, a tall guy who has really great passing ability. Ben Simmons is definitely a better ball handler than Blake Griffin ever will think of being, but he's got to develop that 10 to 15-foot game to have something else to round out his entire game. Joel Embiid, they didn't really need him in this series. I don't think he even got there until Game 4, where the masked process took over pretty much, and he's been one of the few guys to really do anything in the second round. But 76ers have the same problem possibly as the Bucks. You have Ben Simmons, you have Joel Embiid, two really young superstars. Ben Simmons, technically, I guess, a rookie. That's a debate for later, I suppose. But Joel Embiid only played a handful of games in 3 years in the league because of injuries. But are those two going to be kind of in cohesion going forward? Do they see championships and money in their future, or do they want to be their own star? Like that's my only big thing with the 76ers right now.
If they don't win in the next 2 years, one or both of them are gone. So, I mean, that's just how it is going. We know that with the 76ers, they'll send you away in a heartbeat if they're not winning championships, which they don't. They think they're going. They think they're going to, and they just don't. And that's where they are right now. They have the pieces in place. They have veteran players. I mean, I hate to say it, but J.J. Redick is one of those veteran players you want on your team because
I will begrudgingly agree with you.
I mean,
because he's turned into a solid NBA player at the absolute worst. I mean, he's pretty much option number 3, maybe 4 at the absolute worst on a good 76ers team. Yeah. But here's a fun little fact for you. I was listening to our boy Bomani Jones the other day. He has a new podcast out that took the place of the radio show. He says now Joel Embiid is introduced during warm-ups as the process. The 76ers are no longer the process as a whole. Joel Embiid has embodied himself as the process. If you're Ben Simmons, that would tick you off, right?
I think that just ended the conversation about the 76ers, because if that's what they're doing, then there's no hope, and they will never win a championship within the next 5 to 10 years. Yep.
I would tend to agree with that. All right, moving on to the next series. Cleveland Cavaliers got the 4-3 victory over the Indiana Pacers. Just coming into this, did you even have a fathomable thought that the Pacers would take this to 7?
Well, to be honest, yes, I had a fathomable thought that it would have went 6 or 7 just because they have Bron's number. That's just the Pacers. And I honestly thought the Cavs would have lost in the semis, but of course, alluding to earlier, they won 4-0 against the Raptors. It honestly flip-flopped in terms of how I think it would have went, in terms of Raptors winning 4 after the Cavs go 7 and barely beat the Pacers. I don't know. I mean, again, LeBron is just a hell of an athlete. There's nothing else you could say about him. He has a stable people around him. I don't know if he has a stable team. Sure. But I mean, what can you say? He's not the GOAT. He'll never beat the GOAT because the Eastern Conference is, I mean, some high school teams can go out and beat the Eastern Conference right now, but
can they this year? Because the East to me in the playoffs have actually been more interesting this year.
I ain't gonna say it hadn't been more interesting, but they still have losing records in the top 8, and nobody in the top 8 has a losing record in the West. So,
I would have to fact check you there. But anyways, the Pacers were in this series. The Pacers were in this series for 2 reasons. Number 1, Victor Oladipo. He went into, I think he was drafted by the Orlando Magic. Yep, there you are. Okay, I lost you for a second. He was drafted by the Orlando Magic, and he's turned into a pretty solid player now that he's got a decent cast around him and can spread his wings a little bit. But the main reason that that Cleveland had trouble? Lance Stephenson.
He's dirty. He's a bad man.
He is literally the sense of that word, because like the dude blows air in LeBron's ear, 5 years ago? And LeBron has this one guy in the whole entire league that he can't shake, and it's Lance freaking Stephenson.
Yeah, I don't know. And real quick, just going off my fact check, you were right. All 16 teams in the NBA had a winning record this year. So
that's not the way I expected the fact to actually be incorrect.
Yeah, I know. Me either,
I'll take it. Hey, that's a good sign, though. That means there were some pretty terrible teams down at the bottom.
I think the Cavs are number 4, but Oladipo is a freak. Lance Stephenson, he's just got Bron's number and just gets in his head. But then again, it never matters in the end because the Pacers never get past the first round.
Yep. All right, running down the Western Conference real quick on the first round. Houston Rockets over the Minnesota Timberwolves, who also have a good young nucleus, but the Rockets with a pretty easy 4-1 win. Nothing really to note there except, Karl Anthony Towns is a beast in the making. I mean, he's pretty darn close to already being there, but they're one or two pretty good players away from being solid for years to come. The other one that kind of surprised me, even though the Spurs were the 7th seed this year, the Warriors made pretty quick work of them, 4-1.
Yeah, I think with me, the Spurs just have too much politics going on. I mean, they so much drama around Kawhi Leonard. You got Pop, who's constantly popping off at the jaw with everything that's going on in the world instead of doing his job. I mean, I love the Spurs. I love everything within that organization, but they're just not what me and you grew up watching since Pop's been coaching that team.
Yeah, and Pop has turned into like the Bill Belichick of the NBA in a sense that he has that coaching tree under him because the Charlotte Hornets, so our local team, just hired one of his assistants to be their head coach, and another one of his assistants just got hired by another team. I believe it was can't remember, but basically they've had their whole bench cleared of assistants this offseason.
And even the female coach who they have, the female assistant coach that the Spurs have, is also interviewing for head coaching jobs currently in the NBA.
Which is fantastic.
I agree. I think it's amazing. But, I mean, that's just no one's going to be left there but Pop. He knows what he's doing. He trains these people. But what's after Pop in San Antonio is going to be something.
Yeah, I think they're in for some tough times over the next few years, especially if they can't figure out this Kawhi Leonard thing, because you can't have LaMarcus Aldridge be your number one guy, and an aging Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili just can't get it done at that level anymore.
Yeah, I can't say it better, man. On to the next game.
All right, Portland Trailblazers versus the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans brought out the brooms, Cody, 4-0.
The brow, man. I mean, the New Orleans, they revolve around him. He is probably one of the best all-around big men to ever play the game. He can shoot threes, he can shoot the mid-range, he can work on the block. I mean, there's not too many other big men, unless you want to consider Dirk a big man, but he's still more of a forward to me, that can do that. It just doesn't happen this day and age. But he is working to perfect his game, and if they can get a few more pieces around the brow, Anthony Davis, the Pelicans will win the championship in that Western Conference. If they get some pieces to solidify around him.
And they have some solid pieces, and I've watched a couple of their games against the Warriors, and they're much better than I thought they would be. Just, looking on paper, Drew Holiday, those kind of guys that have been around the league for 5 or 6 years, but you never heard huge things from them. But then you see them on actual television, you watch their game, you watch the different offensive sets that they run. They're well coached and have a really bright future, in my opinion. Trailblazers, that's definitely an underachievement for them, because I think with Damian Lillard, C.J. McCollum, that backcourt is one of the better ones in the NBA. And that, to me, being knocked out of the first round as a 3 seed is a little bit unfortunate. But that's where we ended up. And what I thought was one of the better series, just based on a little bit of animosity and talent, was Oklahoma City versus the Utah Jazz, in which the Jazz took it in 6 behind Rudy Gobert. Golly, why is he escaping my brain here. The rookie for the Jazz. I will look him up in just a minute. But you have also, is it all Russell Westbrook's fault?
Yeah. I mean, what more can you say? It's just I hate to watch the Oklahoma City Thunder play because it's 1-on-5, 2-on-5. If you're lucky on a good day, it's 3-on-5.
And it's Donovan Mitchell I was leaving out.
There you go.
And again, Rudy Gobert, they've got some really nice pieces there in Utah. So what I'm liking from this year's finals is you're seeing a lot of the guard kind of changing a little bit. You're seeing franchises that were really good like in the 90s, early 2000s that are now making a reemergence with a rebuilding of their team. And going back to the Thunder and Westbrook is a lot of people like volume shooters because to me, Donovan Mitchell, if you go back and look at his numbers, he had over 20 shots almost every game. Yes, he scored 20 points, but that ratio was not fantastic. But he's cute because he's a rookie. But if you look on the other side of the coin, Russ is over here taking a similar amount of shots, but we give him crap for it. There's not a ton of difference. It's just attitude, drive, and how much we like a guy. And Westbrook has been on the wrong side of that like fence for a long time for a lot of people.
Look, he's a competitor. You can at least say that about him. There's no doubt about it. But when you bring in Paul George and Carmelo Anthony and you still just crap yourself, I mean, I don't know what to say. I understand Melo is not what he used to be. Paul George should be. But I don't think there's anything else to say about them. I mean, it's just pitiful. They're not going anywhere. Until Oklahoma City gets away from trying to build around superstars and hoping that the superstars just win without putting key players around them to try to finish it off.
Right.
Which is what they've done even since they had KD.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's nothing you can say. I mean, again, they're going to be like the Sixers. They're just not going to win a championship because their process sucks.
Well, a lot of that, I think, for the Thunder's on their coaching. Billy Donovan, Scott Brooks, their last two coaches, to me, have just let the players run the franchise. And a lot of that is true in the NBA. The coach is kind of a babysitter who draws up a couple of plays here and there. I don't think the head coach is really an extremely valuable position in the NBA. That's another topic for another day. But again, a lot of that's coaching. And then you have Paul George, who you mentioned, who gave himself a nickname, Playoff P. And he dropped goose eggs. Pretty much. Like you can't give yourself a nickname.
He's going to Indiana.
I mean, you can't give yourself a nickname and then give the performances that he did in the playoffs. You cannot disappear and like, oh, where's Playoff P? Oh, he's over there riding the pine, which also starts with a P. So that's exactly where he ended up, and it's unfortunate for the Thunder, but that's a franchise going in the wrong direction, no matter how good Russ's numbers are moving forward. All right, let's jump to round two real quick, and then a couple of more topics on the NBA. Round two, Toronto gets turned into LeBronto. 4-0 win for the Cavs. Any thoughts on that quick one?
No.
I mean, that's all right. So the Raptors have pretty much.
Bron had the game-winning shot in Game 3, and everything else was completely. I mean, that's it. Game 3 is the only game you can talk about.
Yep, I agree there. LeBron cementing his legacy. We won't talk about the who's better debate. That's for ESPN's nonsense, and whoever else wants to talk about it, Skip Bayless. I don't get into that debate.
All right, anyway.
So the 2-3 matchup, Celtics and 76ers. Celtics got up 3-0. Sixers are on the board, but the Spidey senses tell me Boston probably closes this one out pretty soon. I think it's actually tonight.
Game 5 tonight at 8 o'clock. It just started 10 minutes ago.
So maybe we can check that score later on and see how smart we are. But Boston's just a tough matchup for anybody. I saw Ryan Russillo, who former ESPN talking head, now apparently Hollywood writer, said he's never seen a team do more with less, talking about Brad Stevens coaching the Boston Celtics. And if you look up and down that roster, that's just not correct, in my opinion. They have solid players. Now, they may have just gotten to Boston within the last couple of years from like a smaller market or something else, but they're solid players. You can't, even though like Embiid and Simmons are pretty good or really good for their age, but Al Horford, hot take here, may actually be better overall basketball players than both of them.
You been drinking tonight?
Water.
Yeah, dude,
Water.
Me too, man. But that's something I would say.
I know, right? But it's an interesting take, but it has a little bit of depth to it because you have the wily vet, the cagey vet. That's Al Horford now. He has a good overall game. He's a 4 guy who can step out and hit the 3, who can do the dipsy-do in the post, and pretty decent defender too. So, yeah, that's a little bit of an interesting take for me, but I think it's got a little depth to it.
I also want to touch on what you say, like they're doing the most with less. Like, I agree. They don't really have less. They got Gordon Hayward, who is, when he
hasn't
comes
played
back,
all year, but
as he comes back, though, he's someone to look forward to. You got Kyrie Irving, Al Horford, why did I just Horford?
There you go. Spit it out.
Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum.
Tatum, as much as I hate to say it, again, being a Tar Heel fan,
he showed up.
He's a fantastic young player, man, and I knew that as soon as he pretty much murdered my Tar Heels for the most part of the year. But he's actually exceeded my expectations in the NBA.
Yeah, same here. But you got to think, I'm with you. I just don't think that's a fair assessment of the Boston Celtics. Plus, any team you play out of Boston, you have a chance to lose, whether it's the Bruins, the Red Sox, the Patriots, or the Celtics. You can lose any given day in Boston.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Very, very true. On to the next one. Houston Rockets took pretty quick care of the Utah Jazz in the second round, 4-1. So that sets up your Western Conference Finals as Golden State. Actually, it doesn't yet. Hold on. It's 3-1 Warriors. My bad. But that pretty much is going to be set up for your Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I mean, there's really it's been
it is 4-1. I apologize, they didn't update the graphic on the info I'm looking at. Yeah, so that your Western Conference Finals are set.
Yeah, Rockets, Warriors, and then Cavs, and whoever. If the Celtics close it out tonight, or if we extend it a little further and go back to Philly, but I don't see that happening. I mean, again, they're good. They're in Boston tonight. Boston wins tonight. Let's just call it Cavs and Celtics.
Oh, yeah. That's probably a safe bet there. Don't go to Vegas and quote our name, but I would say that is a fairly safe bet. But so on the topic of the NBA, right, things get heated. We'll call it heated. If you're watching the video, I'll put quotations around it, heated. And that's the reason I say that is this. You have grown men making millions of dollars who get up chest to chest and have absolutely zero chance of actually throwing hands. Zero. You know why? Paper. They're not about to lose their sponsorship. They're not about to lose their shoe money. They're not about to lose their Gatorade money. These dudes don't want to fight. They want to put on a show for television. What these dudes fight, or excuse me, these dudes commiserate more in an NBA game than 2 4-year-old little girls fighting over a Princess Dolly, for God's sake. Yes, no, maybe so.
I mean, yeah, it's shameful. Because you got to think that at this time, Chris, most of these players are mine and yours age at this point. If me and you were to go out here in my backyard and act like this, someone would beat the hell out of us, even at this age. I mean,
either that or call the cops.
I mean, yeah, it's insane. And I know you're going to touch on it earlier, but or later, but what does this teach people our age who think that everyone else does this, I could do this? What does it teach the children? My thing is I'm sorry, you're just like me. You just happen to be a millionaire, but man, you can still get locked up. I have no problem with that. But it makes it not fun to watch to me. If I want to watch, I mean, I know it's still real to some people, but if I want to watch people play fight, I'm going to watch wrestling.
Easy.
You know,
we may be airing this on a wrestling-centric network. Don't get us banned on the first show, for God's sake.
But you get what I'm saying, though. Like, at least that's entertainment. They build a story around it. Here, you just pick.
There you go. You saved yourself. Good job, man. Good job.
But see, I know how it works. You know, I used to be in it. But my thing is like, here you just go pick and choose what you want to do. I mean, oh, this person just barely tapped me on the leg. I think I'm going to kick him. Or this person fouled me on the shoulder. Or if you're LeBron, who's, as we can say, probably the greatest player in the game right now, who every time someone just touches him with a fingernail, he falls down and cries and thinks it's a foul.
He actually did the same thing when Lance Stephenson blew in his ear. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, to me, the NBA is a crap show. I'm with you.
It's not a good look. It's not a good look. And I know part of this, as two Caucasian guys in their late 20s, may not be the most qualified to talk about this, but it's a cultural thing. I mean, and you see guys of all races, ethnicities, denominations in the NBA, different countries. But it's by and large a cultural aspect. And my wife is a teacher, okay, in middle school. And she brought up a fantastic point the other day. She was at a basketball game. Their principal was watching their team warm up with their hoods on. They had hoodies on. They wanted hoodies because they knew the NBA guys warmed up with hoodies, but they kept their hoods on during the warm-ups. Why did they do that? They saw Kevin Durant do it, and that's what they wanted to do. But talking about the pettiness thing and sort of piggybacking off of that is kids look up to these guys. And when these guys, every time down the court, like you said, if you touch their leg, you poke them in the cheek, they're looking for a call from the referee. College is not as bad, but since this whole culture of, oh my gosh, somebody did something wrong to me, it has trickled down to the college game. It's trickled down to the high school game. I've seen it because I commentate high school games in our local area. It's trickled down to the middle school. It's trickling down to the AAU circuit. I mean, these kids that are playing are emulating the guys they see on TV every night who they think are their idols. But is it necessarily a positive role model? Because with these arguments of calls, they're questioning authority. And my wife brought up the point that teachers now have one of the toughest jobs ever, especially in your urban areas or more rural areas, because they see a teacher as that referee. They want to bring up that point. They want to question authority. They want to do it their way because they think they're right. And that's just a weird thing to me, man. Any thoughts on that at all?
I mean, as I said before we came on, and I'll say it this time, it's always going to be on the parents. And it's always going to be about common sense. I don't care how old you are. You know what's wrong and right. You know who you're supposed to talk back to. You know who you're not supposed to talk back to. You know how you're supposed to act. I mean, I was a mean-ass little kid growing up. I mean, that's just how it was. But I
Still are.
I mean, yeah, I hadn't changed much. But my thing is that I haven't – I know who I can say stuff to. I know who I can't. And you have to know that line. To me, and then I think I'll end it with this, as a society, no matter what color, where you come from, anything like that, it's just totally different. And I understand that the people look up to these players on the court and they see what they do bad. But, you know, where we're from, we don't have any pro athletes unless we're in Charlotte. I mean, that's the thing. And the only people you know in Charlotte who do good deeds, who you hear about it all the time, is like Greg Olson. You know, Cam Newton goes back and does stuff from where he's from. I mean, it's fantastic. But if you're not from those areas, you don't see the good that people do. So I just wish that we could show these young folks the good that these athletes actually do on the side instead of just the jerks that they're on the court. I mean, that's what it comes down to me.
That you actually made a really good point there. The dudes that they are on the court, I don't think they're the actual dudes they are in real life. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, but I understand that there's passion in the game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have the coach for the Braves, he got thrown out in the first game of the year. I mean, he was ejected in the first game of the year, arguing balls and strikes. I mean, it happens. It might not have been balls and strikes. I just happened to be watching it. He got tossed. I was like, what? First game of the year. But the thing is that it's just as a society, it's not something that's going to change. It's just going to get worse unless these pro athletes decide to do something about it, because you're millionaires and you will make a difference, then tell people how to act and stop being an ass on the court.
Yep. And I'm a brand new dad.
Yeah, or the field or anything else. I mean, because you got to think, you got OBJ in the NFL. You have, managers who lose their crap in the MLB. And then, soccer is just a whole different thing around the world, to where you have people dying in the stands for no reason.
Actually, that's a heck of a segue if we wanted to. But, no, it's a whole sports thing. It's a cultural thing. But you made a nice little segue also into the Atlanta Braves.
Let's do it, man, because that was too serious, man. We can't do that again in the future.
Yeah, I know. We got to lighten it up a little. The Baby Bravos are in first place in the National League East right now, behind the hot bats and big personalities of Acuna and Ozzie Albies.
The two youngest players in the MLB.
These little dudes are on fire.
I love it, man. I've never been more proud to be a Bravo, because it's been years since we've been able to pull for this team.
It's been years since this team looks like they've had fun. And
exactly.
I mean, you have veterans like Nick Markakis, Freddie Freeman, even Ken Suzuki, who are all dudes probably on the back half of the career that are absolutely look like they're in high school again, just based on the amount of fun that they're having. Their young pitching staff's doing well. Please, God, let that keep going. Mm-hmm. But then you have, like Jose Camargo, who's not really putting up the big numbers, but he's a heck of a glove in the field. He's a big, exciting guy. Ender Inciarte, who was kind of that younger generation before these two or three guys. And then, for goodness sake, you have Joey Bats coming back to the bigs. He just got called back up by the Braves, Jose Bautista. So they've got a really, really good young nucleus, and it makes me excited to be a Braves fan again.
Yeah, and I wouldn't forget about Dansby Swanson. I think a lot of people throw him under.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about him.
Because I have a friend of mine, Brad. If he ever watches this, Brad, Ken. My thing is, Dansby Swanson, even though he's hit and miss, he has streaks at the plate. Mm-hmm. But that's a shortstop that I know is going to catch the ball whenever it's hit to him, and that's what I need defense behind the pitchers. Pitchers struggle every once in a while. You got to have a good defense.
And Swanson's actually hitting 289 this year with a couple of dingers, so a little bit better year at the plate, but for sure a very sure glove at shortstop. And he's sort of on and off the DL this year so far, but hopefully he gets back going. But really, really proud of my baby Bravos. But just look up some division leaders real quick. The Yankees, not really much of a surprise, at the top of the AL East alongside the Boston Red Sox. So they're about 6.5 games above the next team. That's the Toronto Blue Jays. But so that rivalry is going to be starting not in October, but apparently in May this year. So,
dude, the Yankees, they're my pick to win the World Series. I can't say anything other than that.
With the roster they've put together, they should be in first place. So I think it would be a disappointment if they didn't hold on to it most of the year. Yeah. In the AL Central, Cleveland Indians are leading their division at a lowly 18-18. So AL Central does not seem to be a fun place to play baseball this year.
Pass, man. It's that bad weather. Once it clears up, everything will be all right.
I hear you. But in the West, the Houston Astros having another good year. They're up top by half a game over the Angels, who have vastly improved Angels, I guess you could say. Houston is at 23-15 with that half game lead, looking to repeat as MLB champions.
Only thing I can say about that is that Albert Pujols, after Ichiro Suzuki retired, Pujols is the last Major League Baseball player from Little League Baseball that we played when we were in middle school. So
nice.
RIP that game.
Nice. And Mr. 3000 now, Albert Pujols.
That's it.
So, yep. So finally he got there. Took him a little bit longer. He's had a couple of iffy years. I think he's got 4 more years on his contract. I don't see him playing all 4 of those years. But I digress. Looking at the National League real quick, the aforementioned Bravos of Atlanta are 20-14. They're a half a game up on the Phillies, 1.5 up on the Nationals, and 2.5 up on the slumping Mets, who were in first place for the vast majority of the first bit of the year. But that's a really tight division. Only the Marlins of Derek Jeter era are several games back. They're 13-23, but it's going to be a pretty much a photo finish all year for the NL East.
Yeah, no, great division. I'm shocked that it's doing this well, but I love it. It's good to see good baseball back on the East Coast, both in the AL and the NL.
And no surprise in the Central. Seems like they kind of do this every year. The St. Louis Cardinals are always near the top. They're a half a game up on the Pirates and the Brewers. Another tightly contested division with the exception of the Reds, who are 11.5 games back. But the Cubs only a game back, too. Everybody's over 500 with the exception of the Reds. So another really good division there.
Bunch of young fellows in that division, especially after the Pirates traded off all their older vets, or a few of their older vets, and the Cubs still, playing a young roster, and Cardinals just doing what Cardinals do, win ball games. So Central's always fun to watch.
And apologies to the Cubbies. Fly the W. They were the World Series champs last year. Astros the year before. But in the West, a little bit of a surprise here. The Dodgers and Giants, who have been the perennial powerhouses for the last few years in that division, are multiple games back. Arizona Diamondbacks have a 3.5 game lead with a pretty darn good record of 24-11.
Baby Diamondbacks, just like the baby Bravos. I mean, that's it. They have young kids in there who want to play the game, love the game, and just want to win. And that's what they're doing. They don't care who you are or where you're from. They're going to win the game.
Absolutely. And quick transition over to the college sports. If you've followed college basketball, college football, primarily basketball in this case, you know about the Rice Commission, Lisa Rice, who looked into amateurism, the NCAA model, agents, payment of players, one and dones, all sorts of things like that. I'm looking at an article from a very well-established writer here in the North Carolina area named Andrew Carter. And he did a really poignant article about this highlights from the system. The Rice Commission says it calls for an end to the so-called one-and-done rule. And that sounds all well and good, Cody, but there's only one problem. The one-and-done rule is actually enforced by the NBA, not the NCAA.
Again, it's a horrible rule that should have never been implemented in the first place. Again, if the players could make it in the NBA, they should have went straight on. I mean, there's no question about it. You got Kobe and KG and LeBron, 3 of the greatest players to ever play in the NBA, who went straight out of high school. So my thing is it wasn't broke. Why try to change anything? Everything was fine the way it was, and then you try to do this one and done, and then this is where all these scandals are coming from in terms of like Louisville, what was going on up there, trying to get the best players in with hookers and stuff. And I mean, it's where you're getting this whole, I'm going to slip some people some money underneath the table to come play for me for a year. That way I can try to win the championship. I know it was bigger in football, especially through the 80s and early 90s in terms of trying to get that done. But now that's transitioned over to basketball to where I want the best one and done player in my place. That way I can win a championship. That way I can get paid.
And you've seen the likes of Mike Krzyzewski even go to that model. I think more so under Jeff Capel, who just was named the Pittsburgh head coach. But he switched to that model more when Jeff Capel got there. Now, also, Jeff Capel's been under scrutiny in the past for violating some recruiting rules and that kind of thing. But since Capel got there, Krzyzewski has switched to that one-and-done mantra, and it's done pretty well for him. And even Roy Williams, North Carolina head coach, said the other day that it's not that we don't recruit them. It's just that we don't get them because that's not who we necessarily cater to. So, I mean, there's lots of different ways of looking at it. But to piggyback off of that same rule, if the one-and-done rule doesn't end, then you'll say people slightly older than us that'll go, well, back in my day, there was freshman ineligibility. That happened in the 70s and beyond. But that's the way it used to be. Freshmen couldn't play. They were there to practice and get better.
Well, I mean, and that's just the thing. With the day and age we live in, we have athletes being, developed before they're 12 years old. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with travel leagues. That's just something I've never agreed with because
it's a money grab.
To me, it is. But I feel like until you're a certain age and you know what sport you want to go into, you need to be a 2 or 3 sport athlete because that's how you don't get injured. That's how you become a better athlete, and that's how you become well-rounded to making sure that you have all this stuff from different areas. You have different coaches, different people you're around. You know how to act as a human being. And again, that's the thing. You are becoming specialized before the age of 10 nowadays.
Yeah. And here's pretty much the only rule that the Rice Commission came up with or highlight, not necessarily a rule, that I actually agree with, like in a complete sense. College players who enter the NBA draft and are not drafted should remain eligible for their scholarship. That, to me, is a great rule because you don't punish the kids for hiring an agent. You still have that accessibility to hiring an agent. You don't have to go in like Luke May, for God's sake, and at North Carolina is doing right now. He's entered himself into the draft, but he's not hiring an agent. He's going to get the feedback from the different teams, from the scouts, and then you have a certain time of year that you have to pull your name out. In this instance, you can stay in, hire an agent, do whatever you want to do, but if you don't get drafted, you can go back to school.
I'm going to be honest. I don't have a problem with how that rule is now. I have no problem with it. It's if you think you're good enough and you want to forego everything you've been working for in college, go. That's it. I'm sorry. You don't get a chance to come back, and that money's going to someone else. That's just how I feel about it, that you made a decision to come to that school for, you're not getting paid, but of course you're on a free ride at that point.
Right.
I'm sorry. You made a decision to try to go to the NBA. You didn't make it. You signed an agent. You are officially no longer an amateur athlete. Bye.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I can say.
For sure. For sure. And again, to go off of that last little point, he made a point that said players should be allowed to work with agents to better understand their pro prospects. I agree 100%. They need to accurately gauge where they're going to be. They don't need to be falsely advertised and say, basically based on an agent's point of view, because your agent wants that 10%, 8%, whatever he or she is getting. That's what they want you for. They don't care if you're going to be drafted 1 or 61, because there's only 60 spots in the NBA draft, I believe. But to me, that makes complete sense. And it goes back to the rule they should be allowed back. But you need to have an honest opinion from actual NBA scouts, not just agents to talk to you, talking money for you and how great you are. You need to have the full spectrum before you go out.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I know I get it on both sides of the camp here. The one and done rule is absolutely idiotic. It's stupid and it hurts college basketball. Because my thing is everyone's going to college to try to be a superstar. No one in college can shoot a basketball anymore unless you're in one of these lower division schools. Mm-hmm. Everyone's either driving to the basket or shooting a three. You don't have any. That's the only 2 ways you score in the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten, Pac-12, all that stuff. That's just how you score now, and it's because
that's the AAU deal. I mean, people don't teach fundamentals anymore; they teach athleticism.
But my thing is does the NBA not see that that's eventually going to hurt their game with this one and done and people not having time to develop?
Point A, Ben Simmons can't shoot.
Can't shoot.
Can't shoot. Not a chance.
If the one and done wasn't in, he would have went straight to the NBA. He would have suffered. He'd been playing overseas, and we'd have never known who Ben Simmons was. So this overall, I know, like you said, some of that stuff is coming from AAU and all that good crap, but overall, this is going to hurt the NBA. The NBA is going to be a crap show, a really crappy product if things don't get better. And they don't work with the NCAA. They need to work together, even though within the next 10 years, the NCAA is not going to exist. So I don't really care.
Ooh, save that nugget for later, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of the NCAA, point number 5 that Mr. Carter made on the article was much harsher NCAA penalties are coming, as is an overhaul of how academic fraud is handled and viewed if the Rice Commission has its way. Because if you look at the North Carolina scandal, it was handled pretty softly, in my opinion, coming as a Tar Heel fan. So keeping the Carolina theme, as I try to kill a bug on the camera there, with that same theme, they're looking at possible infractions for some of their better players, such as a Dennis Smith Jr. But I know you had a story about one of Duke's former players, Wendell Carter.
Yeah, Wendell Carter's mom, who was also a basketball player at the University of Mississippi, she got in front of the NCAA commission in D.C. and basically said that the NCAA resembles slavery and prison. And that's really all that needs to be said from the article, to be completely honest with you, besides the fact that I agree with her. My thing is not just in college basketball, which I know we've been talking about for a moment, but we're talking about college football. We're talking about your baseball schools who go to Nebraska every year. We're talking about, some of your SEC schools who earn money with gymnastics and things like that. You're earning millions of dollars off these athletes, and they get an education, but they get a crap education because you're just using them for their athletics. Again, we know athletes don't have to go to class in these big schools. We've seen it. It's in the reports at Carolina. It's happening at every other school. Carolina just happened to get caught. I mean, it's a bad deal for these athletes. And Miss Carter even said it to where even if these kids are just there to play the game and they want to get a associate's degree or just a 2-year degree and then try the MBA, but give them like an associate's degree in business. That way they understand the business side of things. That way, if they don't make it, they have something to fall back on. Because let's be real, if you don't make it in the NBA, you get hurt in a few years, unless you're Jay Williams and you just get lucky to sign with ESPN because you understand the game of basketball, that's not going to happen to anybody. And some of these guys are going to be working at Wendy's with nothing else to do.
Yeah, especially those guys that are the one and dones, have been led astray, who have no intention of going to class because they think they're going to be that top pick, and it's not necessarily true. Slavery is quite the harsh word, especially in the context of what we're looking at. I mean, technically they are getting things for free, but this also leads to the conversation of, should they be paid? Should they be given a stipend? Should they be given something other than just this quote unquote wonderful college education?
See, my thing is I don't think slavery is a harsh word. I just don't. I mean, I understand these kids are out there having fun playing the sport that they love, but you got to think, we stopped making NCAA games because we were using players' likenesses. Well, when you are an NBA player and your likeness is used, you get paid. If you should get paid if someone used your likeness on a video game, and they didn't get paid for that. They're selling jerseys with your name on it. What if I don't want my name on a jersey? I know all kids dream of their name being on a jersey, but hey, my name's on that jersey. I get paid. And so you're out here earning all these people who make the jerseys, Reebok, Nike, Adidas, you're earning them money. You're earning the school's money. You're earning shoe companies' money for wearing their shoes on the court with whatever coach picks a shoe, even though I know that's a sore topic right now in the NCAA. But the thing is like you use these kids to make millions of dollars, and you're giving them a crap education to saying, hey, show up to class every once in a while. We'll give you a passing grade and go from there. That might not be happening everywhere, but if you can show me, if you could show me some big name schools to where all of those kids are going to class all the time and getting passing grades, earning it, yeah. I would be shocked. So if you're going to just use them, then give them some money.
Absolutely. And quickly transitioning to one of my favorite segments in the world, football in 45.
Man, I'm just going to have to say, we can't go serious fun. We're going to have to split it up a little better next time, man, because you got me all stressed and worked up.
I hear you, man. But football in 45, hit me up with some Champions League stuff, man.
Yeah, man. Basically, we just got done with the semifinals in the Champions League. We had Sevilla going up. Scroll down. Oh, boy, that was the quarterfinals. We basically had Liverpool going up against Roma and Bayern Munich going up against Real Madrid. After both legs, it only ended up being a one-point win for each of them. You had Real Madrid moving forward on aggregate 4-3, and Liverpool moving forward on aggregate 7-6. Liverpool, even though they're having a bit of what most would call a crap year in the Premier League.
20 seconds.
Going to a Champions League final, May 26th, Liverpool versus Real Madrid. And then NCFC is in the bottom of their tier in the USAL.
10 seconds.
North Carolina Courage is number 1 in the NWSL. And opening day for the North Carolina Dynamo, our Greensboro team, is this Saturday against Tobacco Road FC out of Durham, North Carolina.
Attaboy. See, this is what you get. See, we're a podcast for the people, man. We've covered basketball. We've covered baseball. We've covered college stuff. We've covered cultural topics, for goodness sake. And we get the lovely soccer, international soccer and local soccer. I mean, we're a podcast of the people, are we not?
I like to think so. And, I don't care what other people think. I mean, you have fun. I mean,
absolutely, man. Hey, sure. Absolutely. Anything you want to plug before we head out?
Man, I don't have much to plug. I think my thing is our local college USLPDL team, the Greensboro Dynamo, going up against the other one, Tobacco Road FC in Durham, opening night here in Greensboro. Always a fun time at McPherson Stadium. Make sure you get out there and support just your local boys to try to, hashtag Path to the Pro is what it's called. So support those boys.
Yep, and we went to school with some guys that are in these types of leagues trying to work their way up the ranks. So, go support your local franchises, whether that be baseball, your G League team like your Swarm, your soccer teams who have multiple divisions around the country. So, go support your local athletics and your local teams, because these kids and young guys are trying to make their way to make a living, just like we're trying to make a living on the whole podcast deal, right?
Yeah, and a big thing too, coming in July, we have the South Atlantic League, which is League A ball of minor league baseball.
Yep, I think it is.
Yeah, well, the All-Star game's coming to Greensboro this year, so keep that on your books if you're local.
Cool stuff, man. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at Knockdown underscore. There you go. Knockdown underscore media. We're going to get it right, man. Google Hangouts and this delay just doesn't work it right. But Knockdown underscore media is where you can find us. You can find him at CRTeague008. As always, check out the Wrestling Perspective podcast at WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com. They've got podcasts with wrestlers like Petey Williams, James Ellsworth, and Dennis Farrell is a fantastic host as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Whether you're on iTunes, you can find us there. You can watch us on YouTube. Like us, thumbs up, 5 stars, anything you can do. We would greatly appreciate it. For Cody Teague, I am Chris Callicutt. You have been watching or listening to Knockdown Sports Radio. See you guys next time.